Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. My name is Leonard Brackett. I'll be your temporary chairman for tonight. This is the Belizean Affairs Show number 378. 378. Thank you very much for tuning in with us tonight, those who will be listening to our live program, and to those who will be listening at their own convenience later on. Thank you very much again. And tonight's program, um, but before I get into what the program is going to be about, just let me go back to the preliminaries of our program, which is to say, first of all, we need to do our little prayer, and as well, we need to do our short reading, after which then we take up the formal rest of the program. So I'll just bow my head for a second and say a short prayer. Thank you. Divine loving Father, once again we come before thy presence, asking that thou would continue to have mercy upon us. Please continue to bless our family members, our friends and loved ones, wherever they are, we know them by name and number. Please continue to abide with us, don't ask our hearts, our desires, even our most secret thoughts. Please let the words of our mouth and the meditation of our mind and the contritness of our hearts be acceptable before thy divine presence now and always. Please bless this program tonight, that whatever we have to offer may be of some positive public benefit to our people and country of Belize. Please bless our people and leadership. Please bless this country of the United States, its people and leadership as well, and the rest of humanity, especially those who are in harm's way, loving Father. Please have mercy upon them. For we ask His mercy in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you for allowing me to indulge in prayer. Let me see. I'm going to go to the book of Proverbs and I'll read chapter 8, starting at verses 1. And it reads as follows: Did not wisdom cry, and understanding put forth her voice? She standeth in the top of high places, by the way in the places of the paths. She cried at the gates, at the entrance of the city, at the coming in and at the doors. Unto you, O men, I call, and my voice to thee, sons of mine, of man. That will be the reading for tonight. And uh, in our last program, which was last Friday, by the way, you recall that on Fridays we deal with constitutional and legal case law matters and other issues. And last week, Friday, we were dealing with the changes that the present government is proposing to make to our constitution. And I went through a few of those. And what I'll do for tonight, I'll just go through another few of them again. So please bear with me as I try to pull up the material relevant to that particular subject matter. Let's see. Just a second here. There we go. Okay, so I'll go. I think we were at 53. Condition. Oh, okay. Far away. 53. 53. Let's see. Emergency powers. Okay. Okay. Uh, last Friday we dealt. Last Friday we dealt with recommendation number 55, amendment to remove the Governor General's powers. Uh, as I indicated earlier in the presentation, because we've been doing this particular presentation for quite a while now. While I'm talking, I'm going to be searching for my copy of the Constitution, my electronic copy, so I can make sure that I make my quotations correctly. And okay, there we go. Okay, now that I have both of these in order. Yes, we did discuss last week about the proposed amendment to the Constitution to basically eviscerate the powers and authority vested in the Governor General, as well as the head of state, and for who the Governor General is doing her representation to the country. And they're proposing that somehow or another they expect to be able to exercise the powers of the Governor General and that of the head of state, and they have not explained to the people how they will go about acquiring those powers. They'll just, I guess, by osmosis, automatically will themselves to have, or to decree themselves to have that power. Um, I previously mentioned that in order for them to acquire that power without the acquiescence of the public and or proper process, procedures, and protocols with regards to dealing with the head of state and acquiring those powers from the head of state, there's no way that they have the authority vested in them to exercise those powers, because those powers are not intrinsically vested in them per se. They're agents of the people who control that power. In other words, when they win the general election and go to the Governor General for ascension, the Governor General is just assenting for them to have the powers of governance by virtue of the powers bestowed on her that she's representing from the head of state. She unto herself, without the empowerment from the head of state, has no such authority vested in her or powers. And if they're going to depend on the Governor General to sign off on a bogus PCC Act, which is what they actually did, by the way, for those who may not be aware of that, they went ahead and passed an act of the House of the Representative and got the signature of the Governor General on that act for it to become a legal instrument, and presumably for it to have the power of law behind it, and for it to become constitutional. That matter has not been dealt with in court yet, and I have been saying from the very beginning that they have a serious problem or major flaw. That is that the Governor General powers does not include any power to vanish or vanquish her boss for whom she works. That is that she cannot, as Governor General, assent to or sign off on any documentation that vanquish her boss, who is the head of state. She does not have those powers conferred to her or vested in her. She has already placed her signature on the document, but that amounts to sedition, by the way, because she serves at the pleasure of the governor. The Governor General serves at the pleasure of the head of state, and not the other way around. In other words, the head of state does not serve at the pleasure of the Governor General and or at the pleasure of the Prime Minister or at the pleasure of the people, per se. We have what you call a a state that has a head of state, and we have a constitution, and we also have what you call a democracy. The people vote as a plebiscite. The legislators then are elected based on the people's will, and those legislators then have to go to the emissary of the king, the emissary of the head of state, which is the governor general, for that governor general to assent the powers of governance of the country on the individuals who win the majority seats in the House of Representatives. And as a result, as is stated in the Constitution, these individuals are subordinate officers of the head of state. So likewise is the Governor General. She's a subordinate officer to the head of state. We have dealt with that particular subject matter quite a few times before, and I'm hoping that by now, at least a fair number of Belizeans would have heard those presentations, and those who have not probably heard it, those who have studied on those matters, such as, we would say maybe some of the lawyers, I wouldn't say all, because some of them apparently have no true understanding about what the Constitution really is, and the fact they're consulted or portions of it to deal with particular cases that come to their attention. But to say that they actually all have that minimum level of constitutional knowledge that is required of them, I've seen some of them fall very far short of that. So I wouldn't put my head on the block to say that while I believe that they should have that minimum level of competence, I wouldn't venture to state that they do possess that level of knowledge or awareness, because I've discussed some of these matters with some of them, and like I say, they are falling woefully short. But I will not get into that part of the critique right now. I'm trying to stay with the issue of this recommendation number 55 that was made by the PCC, or the People's Constitution Commission or Committee, and they made this recommendation number 55 to say amend to remove the Governor General powers, and it reads as follows: replace the Governor General's functions in emergency powers with the Prime Minister and the National Assembly, according to them, inheriting those powers based on their command or authority. They do not have the authority to remove the Governor General. That is not within their pay grade. That's too far above their pay grade. As much as they would like to have it done, they have no such authority vested in them to be able to accomplish that objective. Belizeans at home and abroad, I beg your forbearance to please listen to this presentation tonight, because you don't have to go to law school to understand what I'm saying. All it takes is a little patience, some interest in the subject matter, and to understand the seriousness of what is it that these knuckleheads are proposing, and pretending that because they propose these changes, that somehow or another, by osmosis, as I said earlier, or maybe by some other miraculous means which they have refused to probably tell the public, how is it that they're going to acquire the powers to bring these authorities and matters into a legal, constitutional framework in order to be successful. The owner of the company or the boss of the company tells the employees in the company how to do the work that his company is contracted to do. The employees just can't arbitrarily and capriciously decide, you know what, we're going to run this company and to hell with the boss and kick the boss on the side. And automatically we're going to have that power that the boss used to have vested in us, or we're going to invest it in ourselves and just move on. It doesn't work like that. Sedition is sedition, any which way you look at it. And in order for them to achieve that objective, they got to commit sedition. They also went ahead and under recommendation 56, which is the following one, they say amend for removal of Her Majesty's in council. That is that the Majesty, according to them, is like an advisor to them. Her Majesty or His Majesty is their subordinate. And whatever they decide to do, such as in the case of this particular recommendation, to remove Her Majesty in council from the Constitution of Belize, and for all intents and purposes, to eviscerate or abolish any need for the head of state, or at least the present head of state, to have any authority or powers to be the head of state of our country or of our state, Belize, the state of Belize. It says under number 56, it reads here that section 22(1) in the definition of court should be amended to remove the reference to Her Majesty in council. Now, as I'm saying, the intent of these wordings here is to say that the sedition is being committed, but not by the people who put this recommendation together. Neither is it being committed by those who are going to vote on it as in regards to the members of the House of Representatives, but rather because according to them, they have consulted some of the people in the country, which by the way amounted to less than 1%, well, I wouldn't say 1%, probably about 3% at the most. I wouldn't dare to go at 5% because I know for certain that that would be a bit onerous. So I'll give them at least about 3% of the people that they claim that we have 400,000 people in the country, which is a number that has been banted around over more than a decade ago. And apparently, according to them, we still have the same number of people in the country. They fail to recognize that over that same period of time, they have given tens of thousands of people new nationality and citizenship, as well as there are many other tens of thousands of people who are in the country who are unaccounted for or unregistered, or who have no formal, who are not formally a part of the census. And so I always beg to differ in terms of their demographic numbers, because even when they do the census, they fail to do what you call factoring in the census analysis and final reports. So they are always having less in numbers as their final audited numbers, because they do not include factoring, which is necessary in terms of recognizing the reality of our country being highly infiltrated by neighboring countries. Let me just go on to read here. Okay, I don't want to read this part. The part with citizen follows what I was doing just now. I don't want to read that. I want to go back to, I think it was recommendation for the. No, no, no. Just give me a second here, please. Just information, no. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we're dealing with the rights. I don't want to go into the rights for tonight. Establish. Okay. All of these are just various rights um, that they're according to their wishes that they are recommending, which already we have section 3 all the way through section 19 that constitutes currently the rights bestowed or endowed on us, through the Constitution. Okay, those are all rights. I don't want to deal with those. We dealt with those before, and we'll probably deal with them again on another occasion. Okay. Okay, so um, I was looking for a particular section. I think it's in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just quickly go to the early 60s. I'm sure that's where it was. 47. Okay, I'm almost okay. Emergency pause. I just looked at those. Citizenship. Okay. 59, 60. Okay. Okay. I found the part that I was looking for just now. That is part 4, relating to the Governor General. And it says here in the recommendations made under recommendation number 61, it says amend to abolish the office of the Governor General. I dealt with a little bit of that earlier, and I pointed out to you that's what their intention was. There's a lot of Belizean people at home, and even some abroad, who does not understand the level and the degree to which these people are treacherous and are acting like traitors. The recommendation number 60, 61 reads as follows: amend to abolish the office of the Governor General. And then it has item number 60, which should have been maybe 61A, but they have it as number 60, which is a misnomer as far as I could perceive. The PCC recommends that the office of the Governor General be abolished by replacing Part 4 of the Constitution. That is to say, if they replace the whole of Part 4 of the Constitution, which, should I go ahead and read that now? Yeah, let me just do that before let me read from Part 4 of the Constitution what it says. Let's see, Part 4 of the Constitution. Okay, yeah, I got it. Let me turn this sideways. Just bear with me as I'm trying to put the correct size into this stuff so it doesn't. Okay. Part 4 of the Constitution of Belize reads as follows: the Governor General. Section 30 of the Constitution of Belize, under Part 4, it says establishment of office. There shall be a Governor General of Belize, who shall be a citizen of Belize, appointed by His Majesty, and shall hold office during His Majesty's pleasure, and who shall be His Majesty's representative in Belize. That's what the Constitution says, which is what I alluded to earlier, stating these very same facts in my initial preface, and now I'm reading it directly as it appears in the Constitution. However, I'll go ahead and read Section 31. During any period when the office of the Governor General is vacant, or the holder of the office of Governor General is absent from Belize, or is for any other reason unable to perform the functions of his or her office, those functions shall be performed by such person as Her Majesty or His Majesty appoints. That is, to work as an assistant to the Governor General, and in the absence of the Governor General, to then perform the functions that the Governor General would give a writ to that subordinate officer to perform certain functions on behalf of the Governor General. And a writ is a legal technical term which is to say or imply an authority, but it's a written authority. It's not just a verbal authority, or that, in other words, the Deputy Governor General, which is the title that is given to that person that assists the Governor General in to do things that the Governor General will do, but in the absence of the Governor General, that deputy would be deputized to perform certain functions, which does not include, by the way, any authority vested in that Deputy Governor General to vanish the Governor General per se. In other words, the power of authority to assent rests in the Governor General. And when the Governor General is indisposed or has to be absent from the country, the Governor General gives a written authority to the Deputy Governor General to act in the Governor General's absence. But that authority is not the equal and or superior to that of the Governor General herself. It's a subordinate authority that does not confer any powers to just use that power to vanish the Governor General and or to vanish the Governor General's boss, the head of state, because those authorities are reserved authority or powers. I'll just proceed to read a little bit more on the next page. Subsection 2 reads as follows. I need to make it a little bit small, just a little bit small. Okay, I think that should do. Yeah. Any such person, as in the case of who is appointed to be the Deputy Governor General, as aforesaid or aforementioned, shall not continue to perform the functions of the office of Governor General if the holder, the original Governor General, who may have been absent for a while, if the holder of the office of Governor General or some other person having a prior right to perform the functions of that office, that is the office of the Governor General, has notified him or her, the deputy, that he or she, the original Governor General, is about to assume or resume those functions. In other words, the power that's given to the deputy is limited. It's not all encompassing. And the person that have the all-encompassing power in terms of the Governor General, if that Governor General goes and tell the Deputy Governor General that he want that deputy to cease acting in the capacity of Governor General, because then the Governor General is not absent from the country, but is then present and needs to and would like to resume acting as the capacity as Governor General, then that Deputy Governor General should yield or should cease and desist to try and act in the capacity as in the case of the absence of the Governor General, because then the Governor General is then present and there's no need to have the deputy acting in her capacity. Subsection 3 reads as follows. It says, the holder of the office of Governor General shall not, for the purposes of this section, be regarded as absent from Belize or as unable to perform the functions of his or her office, that is to say, the Governor General's office, in regards to paragraph A, by reason that he or she is in passage from one part of Belize to another. That is then, in other words, there is no need for the Deputy Governor General to step in on behalf of the Governor General to act on behalf of the Governor General or with any deputized powers while the Governor General is still in the country. And paragraph B reads, or at any time when there is a subsisting appointment of a deputy under section 33 of this Constitution. Under part 4 of the Constitution, and dealing with the Governor General as well, there's section 32 of the Constitution, and it states as follows. A person appointed to hold the office of Governor General shall, before entering upon the duties of that office, they shall take and subscribe the oath of allegiance and office. Section 33 of the Constitution of Belize, subsection 1 reads as follows. Whenever the Governor General, as in the case of paragraph A, has occasion to be absent from the seat of government, but not from Belize, or, as in the case of paragraph B, has occasion to be absent from Belize for a period which he, the Governor General, or she considers acting in his own deliberate judgment will be of a short duration. In other words, the Deputy Governor General just can't get up one day and decide, you know what, on behalf of the Governor General herself, I'm just going to go ahead and assign some powers to Cabinet to sign off on a document for Cabinet and or do a favor for Cabinet, even if the Governor General doesn't want it to be done, because that's arbitrary and capricious, and that is attempting to exercise powers that are not vested or properly vested. But as if that did not sound funny what I said just now, I'll tell you, we have had occasions in Belize where that particular scenario occurred. Does anybody realize or remember that we have dealt before with the issue of the Deputy Governor General being one and the same as Secretary of Cabinet? It's two different animals, and somehow or another they conflate into allowing it to operate both as an eagle and as a rat. Now, I don't know how come, people wouldn't recognize the difference between those two animals, right? They are two different animals. A rat cannot pretend to be an eagle, nor an eagle pretend or be a rat. But we have had that happen, And still is happening in our country as of today. I'll call names, for example, for clarification purposes. Mr. Stuart Leslie serves at the pleasure of the Prime Minister in cabinet as cabinet secretary. Let's call it a rat. I mean, just to go along with the same narrative that I was expressing just now, right? That same person named as Mr. Stuart Leslie cannot then or should not then be recommended to the Governor General as the assistant of the Governor General as well, or work for the Governor General. It's two different offices, two different positions, two different criteria, two different bosses. And so therefore you cannot have an eagle acting as if it's a rat and running around in cabinet doing favors on behalf of the cabinet by using the powers of the eagle to assent to cabinet's bidding. That's a travesty of the highest order. And I do not know how come the Prime Minister allows himself to feel like that is okay, appropriate, even legal, much less constitutional. And it is not the first or only time that I've pointed out this matter, because it serves the cabinet and the Prime Minister well to have a Deputy Governor General who assent to rules and regulations and laws and other stuff when cabinet so desires, or go and make a request to the Governor General. You're going to your own cabinet secretary in the capacity as Governor General when the Governor General is not available to ask the Deputy Governor General to sign on behalf of the Governor General favors that you, the same Deputy Governor General, sits in cabinet as a subordinate officer to the Prime Minister and the rest of cabinet members. That ought not to happen. We have had it happen in our country. We have had where the Deputy Governor General signs off assenting powers to matters that came out of cabinet, to which he was the Secretary of Cabinet, and went over to the office of the Governor General in the absence of the Governor General and used the seal of the Governor General and signed bastardization rules contrary to what the Constitution prescribes. Let me explain another more critical part. For example, do you know, well, I shouldn't say it like that. Let me back up a little bit. I'm jumping ahead. Because I'll come back and tie it up. Okay? I made reference earlier to the fact that the Governor General cannot dispatch her boss. In order for her to attempt to do that, she will have to be endowed with the extra powers or the reserve powers of the head of state in order for her to try and vanquish the head of state, to whom she is a subordinate officer and at whose pleasure she works. So likewise is the Deputy Governor General. This Deputy Governor General is not granted any powers that are beyond and or above that of the Governor General herself. And some reserve powers that the Governor General have is not allowed for the Deputy Governor General to exercise. And as I pointed out earlier, the Deputy Governor General cannot sign no documents or create no laws or assent to no kind of acts of Congress or acts of the legislature that prejudices the rights, authority, and or powers of the Governor General or her boss, the head of state. That's contrary to constitutional prescripts, contrary to legality, contrary to protocol, contrary to professionalism, ethics, and a whole lot of other criteria. It should not be done, and it ought not to be done. But I'll explain to you how it was done and why I'm saying that these people are a bunch of hyenas, vampires, and kleptocrats who are playing fast and loose with the powers not vested in them, as well as the powers that are vested in them. No way should any members of the House of Representatives, including the Prime Minister or members of Cabinet, have gone to the legislature and have what we are now discussing tonight, the PCC Act, for them to be making any recommendation, including a recommendation which I alluded to earlier tonight as I was speaking, about eviscerating the presence and the authority of the Governor General out of the Constitution, and to vest those powers in the Prime Minister and the legislator. The Deputy Governor General, the Governor General herself has no such authority to sign on to any document that came out of the legislator, as in regards to this PCC Act, to say that she's authorizing getting rid of her position as well as her boss's position. Those are powers reserved beyond her reach. And yet these fools are trying to pretend that somehow or another they're going to bamboozle the public into believing that they have that authority vested in them because the Governor General signs off on the PCC Act. And the PCC Act says to get rid of the Governor General as well as get rid of the head of state. If that isn't stupid on its face, I don't know what is. But when you're dealing with rascals, when you're dealing with people who are, they outright want to bamboozle their way through the process, and who are intent on trying to commit sedition, as well as trying to take over the system of governance and change it from a democratic elected governance to an authoritarian set of governance values and principles, then you get to understand what is it that these guys are after and why is it they're playing so fast and loose. Because that's their objective. It's about accruing or acquiring powers unto themselves, whether truly vested or not, that they could pretend that they have a right to exercise, and then turn those very powers against us to do even worse than they are currently doing. And it's not because they don't know better. They're just bamboozling their way through the process and taking the whole country for a ride. And there are people who know these things. They don't speak up. For what reason? Some of them, I don't know. But I know some of them don't speak up because they hear and abet this type of stuff because they're in on the game. Do you know that the Governor General can be sacked just because the Prime Minister, Cabinet, and the House of Representatives went ahead and made this PCC Act and compromised the Governor General to sign off on it? She can be sacked by the head of state. She serves at the pleasure of the head of state, and she's going to collude, because I'm damn well sure that before she signs any ascension of documents, she has to be informed. Of course, if she's being informed about those documents by the Attorney General as her legal counsel, and the Attorney General works in Cabinet as part of Cabinet on behalf of the Prime Minister who appoints them, then you can see where these kind of travesties occur. That for all intents and purposes, maybe the Governor General had not read this PCC Act. And or maybe she was recommended by the Attorney General that the act had nothing malicious or malevolent about it. But had the Governor General done her own what you call it, Okay, had she read the documents before she signed it? As in some cases where I've seen her sign documents without the body of information being put in the document, and for the legislator to just go ahead and add whatever they want to add there. All those, that's malpractice, by the way, because the way the procedures, protocol, and practices are supposed to be carried out is that she signs off acknowledging what is it that she's signing off on, as having read it, acknowledging it, and authorizing it. She cannot then, after the fact, claim, well, she hadn't read it, or she wasn't sure, or she didn't knew that's what it was all about. Because then she would be in dereliction of her own duties. She deserved then to be sacked. But I just need to read a little more of this particular section here. I think I read paragraph B already. I'll read paragraph C, and it goes on to say, or is, is suffering from an ailment which is considered, which he or she considers acting in his or her own deliberate judgment will be of short duration. That is to say, if the Governor General, in his or her own deliberate judgment, I hope everybody understands what that really constitutes or is implying. That is that the Governor General has reserved powers and authority vested in her that she does not have to abide by and or follow any other input from anyone else. That is to say, within her own personal judgment, his or her own deliberate judgment will be of a short duration. Then she don't have to yield temporary powers to the Deputy Governor General to act in her on her behalf or in the capacity as Deputy Governor General, because she, the Governor General, is then available and has no need to have someone else act on her behalf or in her stead. Uh, there's another portion here. It says that he or she, the Governor General, acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister, may appoint any person in Belize to be his or her deputy during such absence or illness, and in that capacity to perform on his or her behalf such of the functions of the office of Governor General as may be specified in the instrument by which he is appointed. You may all recall that earlier I stated that the Governor General gives a writ, right, to the Deputy Governor General for the Deputy Governor General to act in certain circumstances in the absence or the unavailability of the Governor General proper. They give them a writ, or as how it's constituted here, um, as may be specified in the instrument by which he or she is appointed. So there has to be specific information that is given to the Deputy Governor General for the Governor General, Deputy Governor General to act. And never in any of those instruments is there any intimation and or authorization for the Deputy Governor General to have any powers to sack the Governor General proper, much less to be able to sack the Governor General's boss, who is the head of state. But yet these knucklehead, bunch of mobsters that we have running our system play fast and loose and pretend that that is what they are attempting to achieve and how they are going about achieving it. Because the Governor General signs off on this document. So, according to them, her powers authorize them to get rid of her. She can't authorize anybody to get rid of her. She serves at the pleasure of of the head of state, who is her boss. So she can't authorize nobody to get rid of the Governor General position or the powers and transfer it to any one member of cabinet. Neither can she authorize these jackals to write out of the Constitution the existence of a head of state and to grab those powers vested in the head of state onto themselves for somebody in cabinet to wield those powers according to how they see best. You call it sedition. They will have to overthrow the existing system in order for them to achieve that objective. I'd like to skip that particular one there. And I'd like to read subsection 2. The powers and authority of the Governor General shall not be abridged. You heard what I said earlier? That these jackals are pretending that this PCC Act that they got the Governor General to sign off on, or the Deputy Governor General to sign off on, in order for them to vanish the Governor General's position and powers, and then take those to himself and abolish the position and powers of the head of state and absorb those unto themselves. It says here specifically, the powers and authority of the Governor General shall not be abridged, altered, or in any way affected by the appointment of a deputy under this section. In other words, the fact that they appoint a deputy governor general doesn't mean that that deputy governor general can go and supersede the authority vested in them under the instruments or the writ. Because under those instruments and writs, it's never conceded that the deputy governor general can sign off on this bogus document here that I'm reading from, the PCC Act, and to vanish away the head of state in lieu of somebody else in cabinet to then become the head of state. For example, when they say the office of the prime minister will take up the powers that are vested in the head of state, how are they going to get those powers transferred? They need to explain that to the people. It goes on to say, altered or in any way affected by the appointment of a deputy governor general under these sections, and subject to the provisions of this constitution, the deputy shall conform to and observe all instructions that the governor general, acting in his or her own deliberate judgment, may from time to time address to him or her. In other words, the deputy governor general can't go behind the governor general back and get rid of the governor general on behalf position, office, or powers, or steal them and run will take them to cabinet. Even if that deputy governor general is one and the same, Mr. Stuart Lester as deputy governor general, and one and the same as the cabinet secretary. He should not be assenting to anything on behalf of cabinet that contravenes constitutional order. And we have had that happen in our country. And I rant and rave and complain about it, and to them it's like no big deal. They're having a field day with what they're doing. And as usual, when you talk about these esoteric issues, or point these things out, with these shortcomings, you have the apologists then, who some of them know what the devils I'm talking about, and others who really don't know, but because I'm talking about something that their political acolytes are in favor of. You know, they try to pretend that, well, I shouldn't be pointing these things out, or I shouldn't be bothered about these things, because at the end of the day, the politicians who get elected and are authorized to run the country should be given a free hand to run it any which way they want. And I beg to differ when it comes to that kind of nonsense. Uh, I'll just skip that portion there. Well, there's a one little other part that relates to subsection 2, and it reads as follows: provided that the questions whether or not the deputy has confirmed to and or observed any such instructions that have been given by the um, Governor General herself or himself shall not be inquired into by any court of law. In other words, final authority and powers there is vested in the Governor General's writ. Only the Governor General have the authority and powers reserved then to her as extra powers to question what the Deputy Governor General would do or has done in her absence. If she refused to question it, then no court can entertain a question as to the legality, authority, or constitutional validity, because the ascension is then considered to be authorized or valid under the seal of the Governor General. So if it's all right with the Governor General, then anyhow, I'll leave that part alone. Uh, I'll therefore just transition to the last part of that section. Subsection 3 reads as follows: a person appointed as deputy under this section shall hold the appointment for such period as may be specified in the instrument by which he or she was appointed, and his or her appointment may be revoked at any time by the Governor General. Why? The Deputy Governor General is subordinate to the Governor General, who has reserved powers to revoke the appointment. So I don't want anybody else step to me and try to tell me in stupidness that because the Deputy Governor General signed off on bogus stuff, such as to get rid of the Governor General or to get rid of the head of state, that constitutes a legal, constitutional, or even a moral, ethical, or professional action on the part of someone who was allowed to be the Prime Minister's and Cabinet Secretary to go and wield the powers of the Governor General as well. That's a contravention. And it was done deliberately and with forethought. Call that malice aforethought, and you call that a willful and capricious crime. Section 34 of the Constitution of Belize also falls under the same part. Falls under the same part, part 4. And it's classified for short title as exercise of Governor General's functions. And I have another half an hour to go with the presentation tonight. I hope I didn't lose too many of you along the way and maybe put some of you guys to sleep, but I hope that those who have an interest in learning and knowing and understanding these subtleties or esoterics, that somehow or another, at the end of the presentation, you may have been a bit more informed than you were before. I'll just press on then, and I'm going to read the part that relates to the exercise of Governor General's functions. Uh, this is Section 34 of the Constitution of Belize. Subsection 1 reads as follows. In the exercise of his functions or her functions, because we know that we have a governor general who is a female. So while the Constitution speaks to his functions, we can also intimate in context of the reality of the circumstances that we have a female, we can say his or her functions for clarity. The Governor General shall act in accordance with the advice of the Cabinet or a minister acting under the general authority of the Cabinet, except in cases where he or she, the Governor General, is required by this Constitution or any other law to act in accordance with the advice or after consultation with any person or authority other than the Cabinet or in his own deliberate judgment. That is to say, everything else that came before the last statement about acting in his or her own deliberate judgment, his, his or her deliberate judgment supersedes anything that came before. Whether the advice of the Prime Minister, whether the advice of Cabinet, or whether the advice of a member of Cabinet, or whether the advice on behalf of any other entity, such as the Advisory Council and others. At the end of the day, the Governor General's powers and authority is left to his or her own deliberate judgment as the final arbiter in regards to any matter that needs to be discussed or brought to the attention thereof. And that was Section 34 of the Constitution of Belize and subsection 1. I'll read subsection 2 just for context. Any reference in this Constitution to the functions of the Governor General shall be construed as a reference to his or her powers and duties in the exercise of the executive authority of Belize. That is to say, the executive authority of Belize, as is stated elsewhere, is vested in the head of state. This is the executive authority of Belize, and to any other powers and duties conferred or imposed on him as Governor General by or under this Constitution or any other law. I'll go on to read subsection 3 for further clarity. I still have enough time left. Yeah. Subsection 3 reads as follows. Whereby this Constitution, the Governor General is required to perform any function after consultation with any person or authority. This particular subsection 3 that I'm reading, I do hope that I'm going to reread it because I would hope that people really understand the implication of it, what it's really stating. So I'm not going to take it for granted that I'm just going to repeat the word or read the words and, people are going to just automatically grasp within the context of what is it that is being conveyed here, just the words alone. No, there's a wider meaning that is explained elsewhere after a lot of extra reading is being done in order to understand the real significance of this statement. So I'll just read all over again from the very beginning of it. Subsection 3 reads as follows. Whereby this Constitution, for example, the Governor General is required to perform any functions after consultation with any person or authority, he or she shall not be obliged to exercise that function in accordance with that advice of that person or authority. In other words, the Governor General is empowered with reserved powers to go beyond any advice or input that anyone else is authorized to provide to him or her. I hope that's clear enough. I hope people understand the significance of that particular statement, because I've had a lot of people in debates before say that the Governor General is just a rubber stamp. How the hell you call the Governor General a rubber stamp with all these reserved powers? You know, unless you read this stuff yourself, unless you study these things, and unless you know all the other parts of the Constitution that must be contextualized, you know. And that is the reason why I take the effort to read these things, because we could have just gone ahead and read what was proposed by the uh, People's Constitution Committee, the PCC, and leave it at that. But my interest is to inform, elucidate, and or in some instances maybe even educate some individuals who are not familiar with these matters, to the point where they stop insisting in propagating this. It's not even a misnomer. It's a deliberate attempt at, misinform. How can anyone claim that the Governor General is just a rubber stamp if they really read these things and understand and know what these things are talking about? Because it's telling you that the Governor General have reserved powers that are far and beyond that of the members of cabinet, and she has the authority or the power vested in her to demand or request from cabinet or from the government any matters of state that she has a need or an interest in knowing about, or gain further clarity. They are obliged to facilitate and provide her with any matters of government, input in regards to any matters of government. And she, within her own reserved powers, according to her own judgment, can decide whether or not what is being provided to her meets muster, and or whether or not she's going to sign off on certain things or not. In fact, not only can she dispense with the Deputy Governor General, she has the vested power and authority to grant powers of governance ascension to newly elected members of cabinet and or newly appointed members of cabinet, including the Prime Minister, or she can sack any one of them. That will create a constitutional crisis. With the reserved powers that she has, she can do those things. And yet people are tempted to propagate this concept that, oh, she's just a rubber stamp, and she just rubber stamps whatever the government demands of her. Well, of course, in a certain kind of way, the present Governor General that we have was recommended by the present government that we have for her to occupy that position as Governor General. And so therefore, some people would be tempted to believe that because she was recommended by them, that means that she's working on their behalf, and or any and everything that they want to do, she should facilitate. When she's not there working at their pleasure and for their leisure. She works at the pleasure of the head of state. And the reason why I brought up this topic for tonight's discussion is because of the fact that people are claiming that she's a figurehead. Others are claiming that she's just there to facilitate the existing government. We have found out and have been pointing it out that with Mr. Stuart Leslie as the as the Secretary of Cabinet and the Deputy Governor General occupying those two different positions, he's in a position to create mischief and or to make mischief for himself, for Cabinet, for the Governor General, and I would dare say, if if these people succeed at what they're trying to do with validating the Constitution, with these changes, then for all intents and purposes, after committing this sedition, they will be in a position to say, well, they have taken hostage the powers of governance unto themselves, and not even the people can grasp that back from them. They are acting like autocrats currently. How else do you think they're going to be acting if they were to succeed in achieving that end objective? But again, there is section 4, and let me see. Okay, I'll just finish up this part 4, which has 2 other paragraphs to be read. I'll read that, and maybe by then, we'll come to the end of the show, because we have a few minutes left. Let me see, we have like 20, 17, no, we got about 19, 18 minutes left. So we'll just deal with these other 2 paragraphs there. Let me turn it sideways so I can read it legibly. And that was subsection 3 that I read just now. I'll go ahead and read the last 2 parts. It says, subsection 4 reads as follows: whereby this Constitution, the Governor General is required to perform any functions in accordance with the advice of or after consultation with any person or authority. The question whether the Governor General has so exercised that function shall not be, shall not be inquired into by any court of law. In other words, whatever the Governor General decides based on his or her deliberate judgment, the court, as a subordinate entity in the power structure of governance, has no authority to enter into any or entertain any inquiry into the prerogatives and the extra powers of the Governor General, or the reserved powers of the Governor General. And under the last section 35 of that particular part 4, it reads here: the Prime Minister shall keep the Governor General fully informed concerning the general conduct of the government of Belize, and shall furnish the Governor General with such information as he or she may request with respect to any particular matter relating to the government of Belize. That's the end of that. So these people are then now, as we read in the recommendation, proposing that you eviscerate all of those sections that I just read, from section 30 all the way through sections 35, the whole of part 4 of the Constitution of Belize, and to replace it with the Prime Minister acting as Prime Minister, as well as taking on the powers of the Governor General, Deputy Governor General, and Governor General, as well as the powers of the head of state. Now I can see that happening when Belize become the republic or the future Republic of Belize, where they can then decide, okay, we'll have a homegrown or home elected head of state who can either be called or termed as a president of the country, right? Because for right now, nowhere in their proposals here does it use the term or the word president. But throughout the recommendations, they're intimating that the prime minister is supposed to be allowed to aggregate unto himself the powers of the governor general and also the powers of the head of state. That's what they say in black and white. We've been going through these matters in the past, and we'll continue going through more of them in the future, because these recommendations are currently in the office of the prime minister, and any minute or any day now, they can spring it on us. Come to Congress and in one day read 3 different readings, and with their supermajority, presume then to bring this matter into law, and therefore eviscerate our current constitution in lieu of this new proposal. But any such attempt would be unconstitutional. I'll explain to you why. Let me just, I'll leave the reading that I was doing just now and quickly go to Section 2 of the Constitution of Belize. So it answers that question just now that I posed. See, instead of my answering the question with my own words, I'll let the Constitution speak for itself. 13, okay, I need to go a little faster. Okay, 6, now I need to go to, okay, there it is. Okay, there it is, I got it. So I'm going to read from the Part 1 of the Constitution of Belize, Section 2 and Subsection 1. I will not read the other parts, Subsection 2 and others, at least not for tonight, because I'm trying to answer the question, like I said, that I posed a little earlier. Constitution is supreme law of Belize. This, I'll do the citation. Section 2 of the Constitution of Belize, subsection 1 reads as follows. This Constitution is the supreme law of Belize, and if any other law is inconsistent with this Constitution, that other law shall, to the extent of the inconsistency, be void. So you see, if they go and make a law that is unlawful, that is illegal, that is unconstitutional, then that law, according to what I just read just now, Section 2 of the Constitution of Belize says, that other law, which is what it refers to when it refers to other substantial laws that the Congress or the House of Representatives make, is void. What part of that they don't understand? And for less than 100 words, basically. Don't tell me they don't have enough comprehension to retain less than 100 words, analyze and understand what the devil's, the Constitution is talking about. They just pretend like the Constitution does not exist and they want to be arbitrary and capricious and allow whatever comes out of their head at any given time to be the law of the country and the law of the day. And it does not work like that. That's not the kind of governance system that we have. We don't have a republic system. We don't have an autocratic system. Well, at least it's not supposed to be, but they're behaving as if they have the rights and the authority vested in them to behave the way they're currently behaving. And which is why I call them a bunch of um, scofflaws and kleptocrats. That's the reason why I say that they behave unlawful. They do not hold fidelity to the Constitution, and they do not abide good faith with the people, because they swore that they would follow the Constitution and do good for the people and country. And yet, because they have the power vested in them that we, the people, granted them, they want to turn around and pretend that because they are authorized to use those powers, that they can then arbitrarily and capriciously use those powers against us while they are running around fleecing the coffers of the country, stealing all the assets of the country, appropriating those assets to themselves, families, and friends, mismanage and misappropriate the country's assets. The Constitution says in the preamble, under section, I think section B, paragraph B, that the wealth of the country should accrue to the well-being and benefit of all the country, everybody in the country, not just the elites or the powerful or the moneyed people. And then you have 68% poverty in the country, where some people can't even come up with enough money to buy a little packet of ramen. And those are the very same people who want to bring the laws down against and oppress and suppress them. I have 8 more minutes to go. So I'll just, I think I answered the question as regards to what Section 2 of the Constitution says in regards to what is a correct law, and some of these arbitrary and capricious bogus laws that they make, even with their majority, even if it's 100% of them gets together and make a bastardized law, an unconstitutional law. If it's unconstitutional, it's unconstitutional. It has no legality, no power of lawfulness to it. Anyhow, I'll say that's the presentation for tonight in regards to the legal matters, the constitutional presentation for tonight. And I want to make one additional comment, which is to say, our Prime Minister always have a penchant for distancing himself from misconduct, malevolent behavior and attitude, or even deviousness. There are things that happen inside of his cabinet, and more to the point, that happens inside of his own ministry, that he turns around and claims that he has no knowledge and awareness of. Is that to say then that the mismanagement going on in his ministry is not his fault, or shouldn't reflect negatively on him? Or because he's not the one moving the pencil or the paper or the documents around or whatever, the buck stops with him? I wish he was to recognize that. He hasn't seen the Budna tape. He is not mismanaging. He doesn't know anything about what happened while Mr. Mai was sacked out of cabinet by him. He has no knowledge about what's going on in the Corozal Free Zone. He has no knowledge about what other people are accusing our country of being a narco state, of facilitating drug running. When people make those kind of comments about our country, they're spitting in all of our face. We are all being reflective on negatively, just for a few fistful of dollars on the part of some, well-placed individuals. Come on, man. That's not what running the country is about. You want to go and run drugs or do whatever you want to do, you know, just, get out there and do what you need to do or want to do. Make your money. We don't have to tarnish the whole damn country with them kind of nonsense there. But once we get tarnished with that kind of stuff, but once that kind of stuff start grow and set down roots in our country, we have seen what happened to Guatemala, to Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama. We have seen what happened to Mexico. And we have seen what happened to Colombia in the past. And we have seen and are now currently seeing the accusations against Venezuela to the point of, wanting to take over the whole people in country. How can we ever be spared as a little microcosm in that era? 400, 500,000 people. How can we ever fight back, protect ourselves, rather than being, a defenseless papa? We don't have the money, we don't have the population, we don't have the military equipment to defend ourselves. And you guys will be just running around, running roughshod over the people and the country under the guise of independence and nationhood. You're taking advantage of the people. You need to cease and desist. Otherwise, you will end up causing problems to the country and to yourselves. At the end of the day, all I could say is, Belizeans at home and abroad, please help look after your own country's affairs. You don't have to be a patriot. Look after your brothers and sisters and cousins, uncles, aunts. Help them to help themselves. Serve a purpose for having been given the privilege to live in this world. At least a purpose that is greater than just selfishness and personal greed. I wish you guys the best. God bless Belize and Belizeans at home and abroad. Good night. That's our program for tonight.